bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 48, coming at you from the Valley. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, for Bows and TKOs weekly MMA podcast, UFC heavy. But on today's show, we have a bunch of fights that have been announced. We are previewing ADXC 4, UFC Fight Pass Invitational 7. We have the Bellator Championship Series in Paris on Friday. The Tyson Fury Oleksandr Usyk fight, and then Derrick, another fight being announced. We're also in the UFC world recapping UFC Fight Night St. Louis, and then we are previewing UFC Fight Night Vegas 92 from the Apex. So a loaded show for you today. Please like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. Provide feedback. If there's ever topics you want me to dive into, at Bows and TKOs on socials, Instagram, X, Twitter, TikTok, you name it. Love to hear the feedback. And if you're streaming the audio-only podcast, please leave a review and some feedback there as well. But let's jump right in. We got a fight that I've really wanted to see with some fun beef. We got Rose Namajunas, Macy Barber, July 13th in Denver. That is going to be one fun fight to see what Macy is really capable of. We got Cody Brundage taking on Abdul Razak Al-Hassan on that July 13th card. We have Dan Ige booked against Joe Anderson Brito after the brilliant performance he put on for July 20th. That's going to be one hell of a scrap. We got Brian Kelleher and tough alum Cody Gibson on that July 20th card, as well as Bill Algeo and Duho Choi. We also have Brad Tavares and Jungyeon Park. What a brilliant matchup that is on the 720 card. On the women's side of thing, a couple good matchups here. We have Tracy Cortez and Miranda Maverick, as well as Amanda Lemos and Verna Jandaroba. Verna finally getting a top-level contestant to move up the rankings. And then the final fight for that July 20th card, we have Cody Durden and Bruno Silva. We have a little bit of fight shakeups for this June 15th card coming around the corner. We have the Joshua Van Tatsuro Taira fight off, which would have been one hell of a phenomenal prospect fight. And we have Tatsuro Taira now taking on Alex Perez for the 5-round main event. And then we have Tagir Olenbekov taking on Joshua Van. Tagir had been removed from a fight. Alex needed a new opponent, so that's where the matchmaking happened. So excited for those flyweight showdowns. We also have Kevin Holland and Michael Oleksandr booked for UFC 302 at middleweight. So Kevin Holland moving back up to the middleweight division. We got Bobby Green and Paddy Pimblett at UFC 304 for the Manchester card. And the main event announced, this banger rematch, Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blades. When Tom's knee blew out, we did not even get it to start. And then, of course, the champion himself, Leon Edwards, and Bilal Muhammad finally getting his moment. All rejoice for all those Bilal Muhammad fans, but the man deserved it. Glad to see he's finally getting his chance. And then, of course, you can't have Patty without Molly Meatball McCann. We'll be taking on Bruna Brazil to round out that Manchester pay-per-view. And don't forget, it's happening local UK time, bright and early in the morning, so it's prime time here in the States. You feel sorry for them, but one hell of a card this is going to be. Outside of UFC fights, we have some fun MMA happening this weekend, especially for heavy UFC fans. We have the ADXC Saturday morning in Paris. We have Benoit Saint-Denis grappling Mark DeCasey, which should be a fun UFC versus UFC grappling event. We have Fionn Davies taking on Morgan Black as well. Those are the two big matchups for ADXC 4. A little bit lighter because they're also competing this weekend or this week against UFC Fight Pass Invitational 7, which is headlined by Nicky Rodriguez and Mason Fowler, which should be one hell of a matchup. Good test for Nicky Rod. We got Renato Moicano taking on Christian Guzman. So we get to see Renato on the grappling ring. We got Renato Canuto taking on Aaron Wilson. Nikki's brother Jay Rodriguez taking on Janatis Gracie. Raquel Canuto taking on Aislinn O'Connell. So a good Fight Pass Invitational happening this week, I believe Wednesday or Thursday evening. And then also in Paris, but on Friday, we have the Bellator card. Prelims at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. for the main card. But again, Bellator events happening on HBO Max. Boy, am I stoked about that. And these are some great ones. We got the Patchy Mix Magomedov rematch. We have Cedric Doumbé. Hopefully he doesn't get a sliver. Taking on Jalil Willis. And then we have University of Wyoming alumni wrestler. You know, I got to represent them pokes. We got Archie Colgan, 9-0, undefeated, taking on Thibault Goody. We have Aspen Ladd taking on Katarina Shaklava, ex-UFC blood, going down in Bellator. But the probably biggest event of the weekend, we have Tyson Fury, Oleksandr Usyk, probably around 3 p.m. Pacific on DAZN pay-per-view. You never know with boxing. It's like a whole freaking hour and a half after the co-main to even get this fight started. This is a massive, massive bout. One of the biggest bouts in boxing history, if you ask me. We have the true heavyweight champion and Tyson Fury taking on, I think they call it the cruiserweight champion and Oleksandr Usyk. There is definitely a size advantage for Fury and a lot of question marks around him after the Francis Ngannou showdown. But looks like to be in the best shape, a lot better shape than the Ngannou fight. This is the fight we've all been wanting for a long time. I am not a boxing connoisseur, but I would say the length and the footwork and ability of Tyson Fury should pay huge dividends. We have seen him knocked down before. We've seen Oleksandr Usyk in some tough matches as well. But I think simply because the size advantage, Tyson Fury is going to pull out a close decision here. But I can't wait for this boxing fight. It's going to be worth it. I don't know any other fights on the card. It's all about Fury Usyk in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And also in boxing news, it is announced that Darren Till is finally fighting in a pro boxing bout against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Murdered that. I know Julio Cesar Chavez. Come on now. And they will be on the undercard for the Mike Tyson Jake Paul card. They will be fighting 6 3-minute rounds. So finally, Till getting back in the MMA world or pro sports world. And he gets a payday against Julio Cesar Chavez. So excited for that. Excited for the Tyson Fury fight. Finally, after the delay from the Ngannou fight. I think there's an automatic rematch clause in here too, so we might see a second one. But really excited to see how that goes down and see how good Oleksandr Usyk really is. But let's take a little quick preview of what's to come in the MMA world, as it's an exciting summer for UFC, Bellator, the whole nine. Let's start with the UFC, if I can pull it up here, on what is up and coming. We have, obviously, UFC 302, Islam Makhachev, Dustin Poirier. The co-main in that, a stacked 5-rounder, Sean Strickland, Paulo Costa. I am so hyped for both of those fights. Fingers crossed the Diamond could pull it off. What a run that would be for him. We have a fight night card in Louisville, Kentucky. We have Jared Cannonier headlined against Nasruddin Imavov. Nasruddin's moment. Jared gets another win. He's right there in title contention. A great light heavyweight matchup. Dominic Reyes and Dustin Jacoby. Finally, we get the rematch between Ricky Tercios and Raul Rosas Jr. The rest of the card, somewhat decent. Nothing that really jumps off the page there. Then we go into, and these are all back-to-back weeks, another Apex card. It's that short notice Alex Perez, Tatsuro Taira matchup. And to be honest, this Apex card is not very deep whatsoever. Those flyweight bouts that we announced are probably the better bouts. So a little bummed about that. But then we go into local ABC. We finally have the Riyadh UFC card early in the morning, headlined by Robert Whittaker and Khamzat Chimaev. I am so fired up for this fight. We got Sergey Pavlovich and Alexander Volkov. That's going to be one hell of a scrap. Johnny Walker, Volkan Ozdemir. Renat Fakhretdinov and Nicholas Dalby. That's great matchmaking right there. Fareed Basharat and Montel Jackson. So a top-heavy but solid fight night card early morning on June 22nd, which then sets us up for International Fight Week a little earlier this year at the end of June. UFC 303 with the Conor McGregor return against Michael Chandler. We have Carlos Ulberg filling in against Jamal Hill on short notice. We have Joe Pyfer fighting Marc-Andre Barriault. Ian Gary and Michael Page. Cub Swanson, Andre Feely. I don't even think this card's completed yet. Peyton Talbot's fighting. We have Michelle Watterson Gomez and Jillian Robertson. So that is going to be phenomenal. International Fight Week always shows out. And then we have a week off, and then we have a fight night card July 13th that's not quite built out. We have another fight night card July 20th that's for sure in the Apex. July 13th isn't determined yet. Then we have UFC 304 in Manchester, the early morning card. We just broke down most of those fights. Leon Edwards, Arnold Allen, Tom Aspinall, the Muhammad Makayev, Manel Kopp, Bobby Green, Patty Pimblett, Meatball Molly, Nathaniel Wood, Daniel Pineda, Mick Parkins fighting, Christian Leroy Duncan, Robert Brizek. So solid Manchester card. I feel sorry for them having to fight at like 3 a.m. local time. Back to ABC, this time in Abu Dhabi. That Corey Sandhagen, Umar Nurmagomedov fight that just got announced. There's going to be some solid fights there. I'm sure Abu Dhabi always puts on a good card. That will also be early in the morning. Then we have UFC 305 announced in Perth. Not a lot booked. Nothing quite booked for that card yet. We also have the Sphere for UFC 306. We'll see if that gets done or not. Happening in September. And then we know that UFC 308 will be in Abu Dhabi. And there's also a September fight night card in Paris. In the PFL, we have the June Summer Series starting June 13th. We have the full regular season, then the second section of the playoffs in August. For Bellator, well, let's look real quick if there's any amazing matches here in PFL. Nothing amazing on the first heavyweights and women's flyweights. Light heavyweights and lightweights. We got Clay Collard fighting. Mads Burnell, I don't even know who that is. Patricky Freire taking on Bruno Miranda. Robert Wilkinson taking on Joshua Silveria. It's decent fights. Nothing really there. As I mentioned, the PFL and Bellator quality just, even though they're combined, still does not come close to the UFC. We have Logan Storley, Laureano Staropoli, Magomed Omalatov, Brennan Ward, Gabriel Braga, Bubba Jenkins. Nothing too special there either. And then August, the playoffs. So PFL Mint, Bellator, probably more excited about what they have. They got that Champion Series in Dublin, June 22nd. Jason Jackson's fighting. We got Paul Hughes taking on Bobby King. We got not much there either. So Dublin, pretty lackluster. We got San Diego in September. That isn't booked yet. We got London, Chicago, and Paris. Those aren't built out yet. So not a lot going on in PFL Bellator that's really jumping off the page, but a ton of excitement. The Sphere, Manchester, International Fight Week. It's about to go down. Well, let's talk about what went down at UFC Fight Night in St. Louis, man. Sheesh. I went 4-8 on the picks. Draw it up as a bad night in the office, but I'll take it because the card showed out. Overall, Bows and TKOs, 48 episodes in, 297 wins, 152 losses, 6 no contests or draws. On the year, I'm 104 wins, 66 losses, 3 no contests or draws. But recapping the card, I did expect a loud and boisterous Midwest crowd, a lot of violence in the main card, some really close, well-matched bouts, and that's exactly what the card delivered for the people. The last few fights definitely showed out. The hometown fighters delivered. I give it a 7 out of 10. I rank it even better than 301 that happened the week before in Rio de Janeiro. But let's kick it off in the prelims. We had Veronica Hardy with unanimous decision over JJ Aldrich. And this was quite the performance from that vastly improved Veronica Hardy, man. She was controlling the pace in this fight, controlling the center of the octagon. She won the striking battle with her speed and accuracy over a very tough veteran. And she was even able to avoid the takedowns. She did well when she was clinched up against the cage. She stuck to her game plan brilliantly for 15 minutes. And she didn't do much to put herself in danger, and that really wrapped it up for her to steal enough rounds. It was a close fight, but breaking down the stats, JJ only landed 38 total and 27 significant strikes. She was 0 for 2 in takedown attempts, and she did have 5 minutes and 9 seconds of control time. Meanwhile, Veronica landed 69 total strikes, 36 of them significant, so quite a bit higher in volume. Although JJ had control time, she didn't do really anything with it. And I was surprised that Veronica was able to eliminate the offense that JJ usually pours on her opponents. But statistically, JJ landed 38 total strikes, That sets us up for Veronica extending her winning streak to 3, all since her return from her soft retirement. And JJ ends her 2-fight winning streak. She does start a new losing streak. She is 3-3 since 2022. So what's next? Well, I do think the next fight, Veronica, is Ariane Lipski. And for JJ, how about Antonina Shevchenko? I think those are great matchups. Veronica is ready to take that step up after this performance. I did get that fight picked wrong. Another fight I got picked wrong that was super, super close. Looking at it, I'm not too upset about the decision, but it could have gone either way. We had Charles Johnson with the unanimous decision over Jake Hadley. And what a freaking razor-thin margin this was, man. As a typical Charles fight, he started very slow in the first round. And as the fight went on, he picked it up. But he barely did anything at all in round 1. He almost looked frozen as Jake boxed him up. And maybe fighting in front of the home crowd was a little bit too much for him. But his corner got him to get his shit together. And in round 2, he was able to defend the takedown attempts from Jake. He was landing more shots, got the control, took the pace of the fight, and he swung it into his favor. Now, round 3, this was what was going to determine the entire fight. It was very close. I actually do think some of the final shots Charles landed won him the fight. And we're talking the last 20 seconds, he was having more volume. And Jake was trying like hell the entire round to get the takedown early in the round and steal it. But Charles did his job, defended it, and really took victory that way. A really, really great and gritty performance by Charles. Man, what a rebound from round 1, though. Because he looked like a statue. That man was straight up frozen. Statistically, Charles landed 88 total strikes, 70 of those significant with a knockdown. And Jake landed 50 total strikes, 48 of those significant. He was 0 for 11 in takedown attempts. But he did have 2 minutes and 12 seconds of control time. Now, Charles extends his winning streak to 2. He's an even 4-4 in the UFC since 2022. He's been really active, mixed results. And Jake extends his losing streak to 2. He's also 500 at 3-3 in the UFC. So what's next? Well, I would love to see Charles scrap with Alan Nascimento. And for Jake, he could take on CJ Vergara. I think those would be very good matchups. Which set us up for Tabitha Ricci getting a split decision victory over Tisha Pennington. And there was lots of drama around this fight as well. But what a back and forth close fight this was. Tisha looked like the tiny tornado of old in round 1. But the volume and combinations of like 5 or 6 strikes, when she closes distance, she's, really coming in like a video game. And when you're doing that, it's going to, wear on you. She could not keep that pace up after round 1. But Tisha was having the better of Tabitha in the striking exchanges, but didn't get a fire as much volume as Tabitha closed distance. She looked to clinch. Tisha and try to get the advantage on the canvas. But at the end of round 1, she was able to get a takedown, and that was really a sign of things to come. But she couldn't finish a takedown the rest of the night, which is surprising. Tisha did really good defending the takedowns, being active, and just kind of willing herself to not getting taken down. Which, remind you, she's coming off just having a baby, her first fight camp since doing so. And I was really impressed with how good a shape she was in, how sharp she performed. And obviously you can assume she's been training with Raquel as the current champion. Either way, Tisha's back. She's going to be a matchup that nobody wants. But the difference was, sure, maybe you give Tisha the first round. The rest of the fight, Tabitha was in control the entire fight and Tisha did nothing. If Tabitha has Tisha up against the cage and she's controlling the fight, she's owning the octagon and still landing some strikes, maybe Tisha lands 2 strikes, but Tabitha holds you up against the cage and controls the octagon, that is the round to Tabitha. She did that for 2 rounds, rounds 2 and 3. You're voted by rounds, not by the best round. She won 2 out of the 3 rounds. It was clearly Tabitha's fight. I don't understand how people think that Tisha won that fight, and the stats kind of tell that story as well. Tabitha landed 94 total strikes, 54 of those significant. She did only have 1 takedown in 10 attempts. Again, credit Tisha. And she had 5 minutes and 15 seconds of control time, which is enough for a full round. Now, Tisha landed 92 total strikes. Majority of those were in the first round. You could probably cut those in half the rest of the fight. And 80 significant strikes. She was 0 for 2 in takedown attempts herself. So I gave Tisha round 1, Tabitha rounds 2 and 3. Again, I understand striking and damage is the deficit, but she didn't land any big damage in rounds 2 or 3 to sway the rounds either. There is still a part of scoring that if there isn't a lot of strikes landed, who's controlling the octagon, who's pushing the pace, who's owning the control time, whatever it is, Tabitha had all those things. But regardless, Tabitha does start a new winning streak. She's 4-1 since 2022 and stays at 11 in the rankings. Tisha extends her losing streak to 2. She hasn't won since August of 2021 against Angela Hill. So what's next? Well, I think the next fight for Tabitha could be Marina Rodriguez. And for Tisha, she could square up with another veteran and Karolina Kowalkiewicz, who just recently fought. I would love those matchups for both women, and I think those are good for the fans as well. Moving on, we had Esteban Rabovics with a round 1 knockout over Terrence McKinney. And this was as damn near impressive of a head kick knockout as it gets, man. The fact that Esteban didn't get a bonus from this fight is highway robbery if you ask me. And poor T-Rex, man, he continues to live and die by the sword with fast finishes, and tonight did not go his way. It only took Esteban 5 total and significant strikes with the knockdown. Terrence did also land 5 total and significant strikes, but this one was over quick as Terrence came in, boom, head kick knockout. Brilliant. And T-Rex was down for quite a while. So Esteban extends his winning streak to 2. If you don't know about Rabovics, now you know. He's 3-1 in the UFC since 2023. Terrence ends his 2-fight winning streak and starts a new losing streak. He's an even 4-4 since 2022. He's been active, but a lot of mixed results. So where do these guys go next? Give me Esteban and Michael Johnson. That's another amazingly fun scrap. And for Terrence, he could face Jamie Malarkey. Would love to see that one next. Moving on, we had the dream. Chase Hooper with a round 2 submission via Darce choke over Vyacheslav Borshev. What a big boy performance this was from Chase Hooper. He sat Vyacheslav down with a straight right. Then he moved around him with his BJJ like it was just grappling practice, with ease. The fact that Borshev even was able to get out of round 1 was a huge win because he got taken down. He was dominated on his back. There was a ton of ground and pound, even a couple elbows. And at the start of round 2, it was the same story. Looking at this fight, it really makes you wonder, at only 24 years old, with the length and size that Chase has, if he can strike with legit strikers, he is going to be a problem. He has discussed moving up to lightweight full time, so it'll be interesting to see what happens here. But man, what a show by Chase. More drama to be had here, though. As Vachislav kind of went for a tap, it looked like a tap for me. He was debating that he didn't tap because clearly the Darce choke wasn't sunk. Chase Hooper on the MMA Hour even admitted he didn't really have much tightness there. So it was kind of a weird fight. It should have been stopped before. He got to go there. It looked like a tap. It is what it is. I'm not mad about it. It sucks to suck, but he got dominated. Look at these stats. Chase landed 129 total strikes, 62 of those significant with the takedown, 2 submission attempts, and a knockdown, as well as 6 minutes and 3 seconds of control time, while Vachislav landed 2 total and significant strikes. That's 127 strike differential. He almost had the entire fight of control time, a knockdown, 2 submission attempts, and a takedown. But when he sat him down with that nice right, man, woo-wee, you gotta love it from the young blood. There was a moment in time where a lot of the MMA brass said that they should have Chase go fight in other promotions because he's still so young and growing into his body. Well, he's proven the people wrong. Chase now extends his winning streak to 3. These are all at lightweight. He is 4-1 since 2022. And Vachislav starts a new losing streak. He moves to 3-3-1 in the UFC since 2021. Well, where does Chase go after this performance? Give me Chase and Jim Miller. That would be so much fun. But I doubt Jim takes that fight. So how about a guy like Claudio Puelles? I think that would be a good matchmaking. And for Vachislav, he could take on Christos Giagos. But this set us up for a crazy main card. We had Waldo Cortez Acosta with a unanimous decision over Robelis to Spain. I absolutely did not think this would go to decision. And I did not have on my bingo card that Waldo Cortez Acosta would just grapple Robelis the entire fight. At the beginning of the fight, while Robelis was still fresh and hoppy, he was coming in with some heat, some big swingers with that long reach advantage. And he damn well did clip Waldo a few times. And I thought it was going to be another quick knockout with the big shots. But out of nowhere, Waldo went for a double leg and was able to get the takedown like he was his grappling partner. Easy takedown. Waldo, he's used to other fighters wrestling him on their path to victory and wearing on him to take away his power striking. And that's what he had to do in this fight. He didn't want to stand and strike with the powerful Taekwondo artist, which, again, did not see coming, but it makes sense, especially when it's that easy for him. And Robelis hasn't been proven as a full MMA practitioner, and clearly he has a long ways to go, as Waldo was able to grapple his way to victory with ease the rest of the fight, and Despain tired himself out and definitely had no chance getting off his back. He wasn't moving his hips. He wasn't shrimping. He wasn't looking to square up. It was honestly kind of a pitiful sight, as Waldo doesn't have very good grappling either, and hardly had to do anything once he got the takedowns. He was just laying on them. So 2 guys not meant to grapple. 1 did it for victory. A very sloppy fight. Clearly, Despain at 35, I believe, has a ton of work to do if he wants to fight real competition as an MMA artist, because Waldo's not a grappler and he grappled him pretty easily. Statistically, Waldo landed 130 total strikes, 52 of them significant. He had 3 takedowns in 4 attempts, a submission attempt, and 9 minutes and 49 seconds of control time. Robelis, meanwhile, landed 28 total and 26 significant strikes. So Waldo extends his winning streak to 3. He is 6-1 in the UFC. Although not pretty, he's rolling. And Robelis suffers his first pro loss. He's an even 1-1 in the UFC. So where do these big guys go next? Well, I think a fun heavyweight banger would be Waldo and Marcos Rogerio de Lima. And for Robelis, let's match him up with another striker heavy fighter and Junior Tafa. Give the people what they want. Moving on. We had Sean Woodson with a unanimous decision over Alex Caceres, another fight I picked wrong, but I'm not surprised. This was another very, very close fight. But I'll tell you what, Sean definitely has different versions of himself. When he is fresh and he's using his length and he's faking a lot with his shots, Sean O'Malley style, he looks like a world beater, man. At the beginning of this fight, he was putting it on Alex Caceres. But he definitely struggles to keep up that pace. and that intention over the course of 3 rounds, especially at this level, with as much experience as he has, that's kind of wild for me to think. If your game plan is to be able to pick guys apart and use your feints, you better make sure you're in shape to do that for 15 minutes, because if you can only do that for 5 minutes, quality guys are going to whoop that ass. But Alex did come strong in round 2. He was landing a lot more of the powerful strikes. He changed the course of the fight. And both men fired off at such a high clip, they were pretty worn out by round 3. But Alex was pressuring Sean and looking for big shots. You could tell Sean wasn't feinting anymore. He was being more stagnant, less head movement. He was able to do enough and move enough to defend and land enough to steal the judges' scorecards. But round 2 and 3, I honestly thought were anyone's fight. I don't necessarily disagree with the decision, as I did think Sean landed the cleaner shots when thrown, and Alex really had a tough luck throwing those big shots and landing clean. So maybe you give him round 3, but I thought Alex clearly won round 2, Sean round 1, but it was very, very close in rounds 2 and round 3. Statistically, the stats are pretty close as well. Alex landed 85 total and 82 significant strikes, compared to Sean's 101 total and significant. And I would say majority of Sean's 101 were in round 1, and Alex had a lot more in rounds 2 and 3. But Sean does extend his winning streak to 5. He has a draw in between. He's now 7-1-1 in the UFC. And Alex extends his losing streak to 2. He is 2-3 since 2022. So for me, the fight to make would have been Sean and Joe Anderson Brito, who just fought recently. But maybe let's give him a top 15 opponent in Sadiq Yusuff. I think stylistically that would be a good matchup. And for Alex, how about a fight with Damon Jackson? 2 OGs going at it. That would be a ton of fun. And much like I suggested in this next fight, it was a lot closer than the odds suggested, as Diego Ferreira had a brilliant round 3 knockout over Mateusz Rebecki. Performance of the night, 50 G's to Diego. And this really was just a learning moment for Mateusz. He realized you can't just go 0 to 100, steamroll through all your opponents in the UFC. But for me, it's especially in the lightweight division, the best division in the sport. I believe I'm one of the few who actually believed Diego would be in this fight and would challenge the young stud. Although I didn't have the cojones to pick him, I really did think this was going to be a learning lesson, and the later the fight went, the more it would favor him. But he did more than take it to Rebecki. You know, Rebecki had a good round 1 burst, but after that, Diego was beating him to a pulp as he had slowed down. Mateusz had nothing left. The play-by-play team during the fight nailed it when they discussed Diego, is that he used to fight like Mateusz did. He would just come out aggressive and try to finish his opponents out quick early in his career. But Diego has since learned from that, and he is a well-rounded problem in the lightweight division at almost 40 years old at 39. Statistically, Diego landed 151 total strikes, 123 of them significant, with 3 takedowns and 2 minutes and 12 seconds of control time. Mateusz landed 60 total strikes, 52 of those significant. He had 4 takedowns and 5 attempts, a knockdown, and 2 minutes and 26 seconds of control time. But Diego extends his winning streak to 2. He is 2-3 since 2021. And Mateusz ends his 16-fight winning streak and suffers his first loss in the UFC. He is now 4-1 in the UFC since 2022. And just a reminder, Diego was 2-3, but he was facing some of the best of the best. So what's next? I would love to see Diego take on Drew Dober. I think that fight makes way too much sense and would be an amazing fight for the fans. And for Mateusz, he could take some time to recover. He looked pretty rough in the post-fight photos. But I think a matchup with Fares Ziam would be a blast and would be appropriate. Moving on. We had another brilliant quick performance by Carlos Ulberg with a round 1 knockout over Alonzo Menefield. Performance of the night, 50 G's for Carlos. And Alonzo came out hot, came towards Carlos, and Carlos, boom, smoked him with that powerful left hook that he has, and that was it. That was all it took. And in this division, when you rush your opponent, there's always an opportunity for an opening, Jose Aldo, Conor McGregor-esque. But statistically, Alonzo only landed 1 total insignificant strike compared to Carlos's 7 total insignificant strikes with the knockdown. I did assume Alonzo was going to pressure Carlos through this fight. I didn't think he would put it on so early. It cost him, and this was another fight I got wrong that I thought was very winnable for Alonzo as the dog. But with that said, Carlos extends his winning streak to 6. He is 7-1 in the UFC, and he enters the top 15 at number 11. Alonzo ends his 4-fight winning streak, starts a new losing streak. He is 4-1-1 since 2022, and he moves down 2 spots in the rankings to number 13. So what's next? Well, I would love to see Anthony Smith take on another up-and-comer in the light heavyweight division, since he has fought most of the division. So give me Anthony and Carlos Ulberg. And for Alonzo, how about a banger with Ryan Superman Spann? Talk about a banger. Joaquin Buckley showing out, asking for the fight at the press conference, gets to fight in St. Louis, not quite the main event, but has a brilliant unanimous decision over a very good Nursultan Ruziboev. And the St. Louis man did the damn thing, man. He is becoming a well-rounded stud. I never thought I would see the day we would see this kind of grappling for Buckley. But Nursultan had his moments. He did land some nice knees up the middle and had some shots that rocked Buckley throughout this fight, as he was definitely sporting a massive size advantage. But Buckley just used the horsepower and muscle that he has by powering through it and proving he could take a shot, has a good chin, and those blast doubles were like football tackles. You love to see it. He would blast double Nursultan. He would get him from the middle and slam him up to the end of the cage. I did not expect to see the day where Buckley resorted to his wrestling and grappling to find a way to win. But with the size disadvantage and the good striking for Nursultan, that's what it took, and he had it pay off in a massive way. Watch out. The welterweight division has another true contender. Joaquin Buckley is the real deal. Statistically, Buckley landed 113 total strikes, 86 of them significant. He had 4 takedowns, a reversal, a knockdown, and 5 minutes and 30 seconds of control time. Again, it's wild to think 4 takedowns and 5 minutes of control time. Never saw it coming. And every time he had Nursultan, it was beautifully timed. And there's a difference in MMA takedowns where you kind of half-ass attempt. He went all out and kind of almost got himself where he was taking bad shots on the bottom, or it could have been in a submission attempt, but he went for it, and that's what you got to do. Nursultan landed 43 total strikes, 31 of them significant with a reversal, so you could see this was really the Buckley show outside some of those knees. Buckley extended his winning streak now to 4, all at welterweight. He is 6-2 since 2022 and stays at number 11 in the rankings. And Nursultan ends his 10-fight winning streak and starts a new losing streak. Well, I know that Buckley went viral for the terrible Conor call-out, but I do think Gilbert Burns will be the next scrap for Buckley and will be one hell of a fight. And for Nursultan, he could fight with Max Griffin in his rebound. I think that's a good matchup. Speaking about secret grapplers, how about the Black Beast, Derrick Lewis, with a round 3 TKO over Rodrigo Nascimento? Again, Derrick Lewis, the grappler. We all know there's always the chance for the Black Beast to knock out his opponents, but I honestly thought Rodrigo would get his takedowns, get ground and pound, and wear on the veteran until he found a submission. Boy, was I wrong. Not only did he get the takedown midway through round 1, but he was able to defend and avoid takedowns the rest of the fight. And you know that Derrick has been practicing grappling a lot because of his opponents, especially the last fight against Jailton Almeida. But man, this was very, very impressive. He even had more takedown attempts than Rodrigo, which to me is literally insane to think about and blows my mind. But I will say that clubbing right hand that he landed Sounded like that would be it, but somehow Rodrigo didn't get knocked clean out and was still alive. But once you have the Black Beast and those lunchbox on top of you, it's going to be a long night in the office. But who would have thought that we would see the Black Beast, Derrick Lewis, at 40 years old, and that he would be in the best shape of his life, improve his grappling, and be a real problem in the heavyweight division. Not even that, he also extends his UFC record to 15 knockouts in the UFC. Shorts off, the cup out, per usual, his balls is hot. He is talking about wanting to do WWE in the future as well. Derrick Lewis, the world is your oyster, and you never know when to count someone out. But man, I've been picking against Derrick Lewis. This fight may change my mind. Now that he's 40 and he'll probably lose, but I can't believe it. I was so impressed. Statistically, Derrick landed 47 total and 41 significant strikes. He did have 1 takedown in 4 attempts, a reversal, a knockdown, and 3 minutes and 23 seconds of control time. Rodrigo landed 72 total strikes, 27 of them significant. So we had more strikes, less significant. A lot of them were ticky-tacky, going for takedowns. He got a takedown of his own, and 4 minutes and 46 seconds of control time. So again, not only did Derrick Lewis fight off his back, he had laid on his back, got tired out, got his own takedown, attempted 4 takedowns, and 3 minutes and 23 seconds of control time. Never have I ever thought that would be the case. But Derrick starts a new winning streak. He moves to 2-4 since 2022 and moves up 2 spots to number 10 in the rankings. Rodrigo ends his 3-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak and stays at 15 in the rankings. So what's next? Well, since they haven't squared off, I'd love to see Derrick Lewis take on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. That's a true heavyweight striking matchup. I think Derrick deserves another striker. And for Rodrigo, how about a fight with Shamil Gaziev? I think that would be the best one for him. But what a card. St. Louis showing out. The hometown guys getting the jobs done. Diego Ferreira with the surprise. Olberg showing out. Some really close fights. Waldo Acosta, Derrick Lewis, and Joaquin Buckley grappling. Chase Hooper coming out party. There was a lot to love about this card. Boy, was the St. Louis crowd insane. The entire fight, they're early, good energy. That's how you do it. And that's why the UFC needs to get out of the Apex for good, because all these other cities show out. They love the fights, and they deserve it. But that sets us up back to the gosh darn Apex. We have UFC Fight Night Vegas 92. The prelims are at 1 p.m. Pacific and the main card at 4 p.m. Pacific on ESPN+. This is a shallow card, but it is a solid main card with a really good headliner before the holiday weekend and then UFC 302 post-holiday. So some good fights. We have Emily Ducote taking on Vanessa Demopoulos. Dana White Contender Series, Kletson Rodriguez and Alatengeli. We have Themba Garimbo and Ramiz Brahmiaj. So those are fights worth checking out. But we're going to kick it off in the prelims. We have Abus Magomedov, 33 years old, with a 25-6-1 record, taking on Warley Alves, 33 years old, with a 15-7 record. Now, Abus has been put in the deep end fast in his UFC career, and he has had some learning lessons for sure. But now he gets to square up with a long-term UFC veteran who is in desperation mode, although he's in his prime at 33 years old. He's on a 3-fight losing streak and hasn't won since January of 2021, and before that it was May of 2019. Breaking it down, Abus is a PFL and KSW alum. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. He is 1-2 in the UFC. 14 of his 25 wins are via knockout, 6 via submission, so 20 of his 25 wins have come via finish. He has a luta livre style and sports a 6-inch reach advantage. Now, Warley is a Jungle Fight and Ultimate Fighter alum. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. 6 of his 14 wins are via submission, 4 via knockout, so 10 of his 14 wins come via finish. 3 of his 7 losses are via knockout. Now, I do think this is actually going to be a pretty solid fight for both men, and this is going to give them a chance to get back on track, where the loser's in a pretty bad spot. Now, Worley is pretty aggressive. He's a well-rounded fighter, but I expect Abus to be able to move well, use his length to his advantage, keep Alves at range, and pick him apart on his way to victory. For that reason, I'm taking Abus Magomedov. We putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on to the main card, we have Luana Pinheiro, 30 years old with an 11-2 record and the number 9 next to her name, taking on Angela Overkill Hill, 39 years old with a 16-13 record and the number 12 next to her name. Now, this is another tough matchup for Luana, as Angela is a grappling heavy fighter, but she can struggle with power strikers. Luana's definitely going to have the striking advantage, but is she going to be able to win the rounds with their volume and cardio that Angela possesses? That's the big question. Now, Angela's really had a kind of interesting 2 years. She's still competing at the highest level against very, very good competition, but now she gets a chance to fight up in the rankings again, and let's see if she could take it over. Breaking this down, Luana has a black belt in judo, a purple belt in BJJ. She is a Brave and Contender Series alum. She's on a 1-fight losing streak, and 5 of her 11 wins are via submission. Now, Angela has a purple belt in BJJ. She's an Ultimate Fighter and Invicta alum. She has the most bouts in UFC strawweight division history with 23. She's tied with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Carla Esparza, and Jessica Andrade for the most wins in UFC strawweight history with 10 of them things. She has the most total fight time in UFC women's history and strawweight history with 5 hours, 33 minutes, and 33 seconds. She has the most significant strikes landed in UFC women's and strawweight history, 1,896 in the UFC, 1,811 in the strawweight division. She has the most total strikes landed in UFC women's strawweight division history, 2,112. She has the most unanimous decision wins in UFC women's strawweight history with 8. She has the most decision bouts in UFC women's strawweight division history with 19. She's also tied with Jorge Masvidal, Clay Guida, and Paul Felder for the most split decision losses in UFC history with 4. Maybe not the best accomplishment. She has the most losses in UFC women's strawweight division history with 13. She's on a 1-fight winning streak and is 3-2 since 2022. That's Angela Hill, one of the most OGs in all of women's MMA. Now, I really do expect Angela to be the aggressor, as Luana has been patient and waits for her opponents to come into range. She does like to throw those big, powerful shots, maybe 1 or 2 strikes at a time. She isn't a huge combo thrower. But if Angela isn't able to take her down easily, and she could circle, throw strikes from distance to outpoint Luana, but I really do think in this fight, Luana is going to be too powerful for Angela. She's going to land the more damaging strikes to steal the rounds, and I think she'll do enough to win the fight. Luana is actually the underdog, which is surprising. I really want to pick Angela here. I've been burned by her a few times, and at 39 years old, it's hard to think she can compete with women that's a woman that's 30 years old. For that reason, I'm taking the underdog. I'm taking Luana Pinheiro, but I'm avoiding this on any parlay where possible. Moving on, we have Adrian Yanez, 30 years old with a 16-5 record, taking on Vinicius Fenomeno Salvador, 27 years old with a 14-6 record. The story of this fight for me is that Adrian Yanez is looking to get back on track in his prime at 30, and he's taking on a dangerous, unorthodox, high-flying prospect who is going to be a dangerous man in the coming years. But Vinicius has struggled at flyweight, especially with weight, so he is now making his bantamweight debut. I'm not sure if this will be a one-time thing or if this is his plan moving forward, as he's missed weight a few times, but this is a tough test at bantamweight for Vinicius. Breaking it down, Adrian has a boxing style. He's an orthodox fighter. He's got a black belt in BJJ. 5 of his 7 UFC fights have been performance of the night or fight of the night. He shows up, he shows out. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. He's a Legacy FC, Fury FC, Bellator, LFA, and Contender Series alum. And 10 of his 16 wins come via knockout. Now, Vinicius trains out of Marcelo Ribas' team. He's a Jungle Fight and Contender Series alum. He's on a 2-fight losing streak and is 1-2 in the UFC. 13 of his 14 wins are via knockout. Now, I personally was very high on Vinicius as he came into the UFC because at the flyweight division, he possesses serious power. He's very athletic and has creative striking, stuff that you can't coach. Many fighters don't get that kind of mindset. But his confidence has been shot. He's facing a ton of adversity. Now he doesn't have that size and power advantage, and he's jumping into the deep end against a very good striker. I think he should have fought a better matchup in his bantamweight debut. For that reason, I think Adrian Yanez goes to work here. We putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We got Chaos the Ox Fighter Williams. 30 years old with a 14-3 record, taking on Carlston Mocambique Harris, 36 years old with a 19-5 record. Now, as the welterweight division usually showcases, we get 2 men who are hard-hitting fighters looking to boost their stock, but Chaos is in his prime, and Carlston, although he's 6 years older, is really peaking as a fighter as well in his 4th year in the UFC. Breaking it down, Chaos trains out of Murcielago MMA. They've been on the map a lot lately. He has a blue belt in BJJ. He's a King of the Cage alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak and is only 1-1 since 2022. 7 of his 14 wins are via knockout. While Carlston has a black belt in Luta Livre, a brown belt in BJJ. He's a Brave alum. He's on a 2-fight winning streak and is 2-1 since 2022. 6 of his 19 wins are via submission, 5 via knockout, so 11 of his 19 wins via finish. I really like Chaos as the younger fighter who obviously possesses a ton of power, but he is coming off back-to-back split decision fights, and he hasn't finished a fight since 2021, so you got to consider that a little bit. But Carlston has 3 anaconda chokes and 2 knockouts since 2021 in his fights. So I do think that Chaos is going to get the better of the striking exchanges, but if Carlston can get this fight to the mat, it's a really interesting fight from there. I'm not betting on that. I'm taking Chaos Williams. We putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on to the main event, and what a doozy this is. We got Lerone, the Miracle Murphy, 32 years old, undefeated with a 13-0-1 record and the number 14 next to his name, taking on Edson Jr. Barboza, 38 years old with a 24-11 record and the number 11 next to his name. Now, I am so freaking excited for this main event as we are getting a very dangerous Edson, who has, at a late time in his career, been on a tear since moving down to featherweight, and is coming off a year where he beat 2 amazing fighters in their primes in Sadiq Youssef and Billy Quarantillo. But I honestly don't think either of those fighters are as good as Lerone is right now anywhere on the map. Lerone is giving me serious Leon Edwards vibe, which I know is easy to compare because they're both from the UK. But this is a classic striker via striker. And Lerone is really coming into his own. 3 of his last 4 wins have come via decision, but he is a slick striker with a ton of power and speed. With that said, can he hang with Edson's kicks and striking for an entire 25-minute fight? That's savagery. But Lerone has never had a 5-round fight. Edson, although he's 38, has gone the distance and had 5-round fights quite a few times in his career. So there's a lot of fun storylines here. Breaking it down, Lerone trains out of Manchester Top Team. He has a blue belt in BJJ. He's undefeated on a 13-fight winning streak. He is undefeated with a 5-0-1 record in the UFC, and 7 of his 13 wins come via knockout. Now, Edson trains out of ATT. He has a black Prajid in Muay Thai, a black belt in Taekwondo, and a brown belt in BJJ. His last 2 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. So in his late 30s, he's still doing the damn thing. He's showing up. He's showing out. He had the 2012 knockout of the year against Terry Ateem. He was the 2023 comeback of the year against Sadiq Yusuf. He had the 2017 knockout of the year against Benil Dariush. He's a Ring of Combat alum and former champion. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. He's 2-1 since 2022. 14 of his 24 wins are via knockout, and 4 of his 11 losses are via knockout. He lives and dies by the sword to knock out or be knocked out. Now, I really do expect Lerone to maybe mix in some grappling throughout this fight like he did in the Josh Kulabau fight in July of last year. He's going to have to bring the fight to Edson so he doesn't just let Edson be comfortable at kicking range and chop at him. I do think it's going to be his coming out party for Lerone. He's going to show people that maybe have seen him or a little bit heard of him, that he's the full deal. He's ready for a 5-round fight. He's a true mixed martial artist with his boxing, his defense, his footwork, and his cardio. I'm more worried about this being a 5-round fight than anything when it comes to Lerone's side. If he does great in this bout, the rest of the division better really watch out. I'm thinking he's going to do good here, though. He's going to use his grappling to steal rounds. I'm sure Edson will have his moments. He'll land some good strikes throughout the fight. But I'm taking the undefeated Lerone Murphy. I'm putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Really excited for that main event. This is a huge measuring stick for Lerone, and if Edson gets another victory here, watch out. But up next, we do have a week off for the Memorial Day holiday, and then we have the massive 302 card headlined by Islam Makhachev and Dustin the Diamond Poirier, as well as a 5-round bout between Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa. This is episode 48. Spread the word. Be a friend. Like, subscribe. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. See you on next week's episode. Peace.